Hello and welcome. In the previous video, we got to take a look and see how we're able to implement the main view and some other JSPs within our application. In this video, we're going to take a look and see how we're going to implement the editing view of an assignment. So the idea here is once we create an assignment, we'll then be able to go into a specific JSP and edit that assignment. So let's take a look and see how this is done. First things first, we're going to go ahead and create a new JSP. So I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of housekeeping, go and clear out all the rest of my tabs, trying to keep things clean as we go on. Otherwise, there's going to be a lot of open tabs. So here we're in the gradebook, gradebook web, source main resources, meta-inf resources. And here within the assignment folder, we're going to create our new JSP, edit_assignment.jsp. Right-clicking the folder, heading over to new, followed by file. Let's call this file edit, followed by _assignment.jsp. Once you have that typed out, go ahead and click finish. So heading over to my resources, here in the snippet, I'll go ahead and copy, and then we'll paste here within the JSP. There we go. All right, again, let's highlight some key concepts, key ideas here. Starting off with this choose, kind of like an if-else statement. So we're going to take a look and see if the assignment is empty or not. If it is not empty, so we're seeing if it is not empty, there will be one specific action URL. Otherwise, if it is empty, we'll see a different action URL. So you'll notice within these action URLs, the names are different. One of them is edit assignment for when the assignment is not empty. Another one is add assignment when an assignment is empty. So checking to see if there is an assignment object or not. This will determine whether or not we are editing an existing assignment or creating a brand new one. With the help of Alloy UI, you'll see there is a field set or a form that's made available to us that allows us to input things such as the title and the description. You'll also notice that there's a validator here on line 45, making sure that the end user does add a description. You can also use the validator in some other fields as well if you wanted those fields to be made required. Okay, so putting everything together, we have a form that's created by Alloy UI. We're going to do a check to see if there is an assignment that's either being edited or not. If there is an assignment that's being edited, then there will be a specific action URL passing a specific name. Otherwise, if there is a brand new assignment being created, we're going to pass a different name. This in turn is going to be calling two separate MVC action commands. Here we are once again with Alloy UI, creating a form for us to fill out various fields in regards to the assignment that we are either editing or creating. Once we perform an action on this form, we're going to be invoking this action URL called assignment action URL. So you'll notice back up here, each one of these action URLs here on line 7 and on line 14 have the same var, but the names are different. So utilizing one var, as we'll call it, but having two separate names being passed, thus calling two separate MVC action commands. So create a form using Alloy UI. Once an action, it's going to be a button click. So once an action is performed on the form, we'll call one of these two action URLs depending on what's going on. So let's take a step back. Again, we are trying to implement the view of editing an existing assignment. So we have to create an MVC render command so that this JSP renders in the first place. A little bit later, we'll worry about those MVC action commands. But right now, working on those MVC render commands. So first things first, I'm going to head back over to my Java class, and let's see if I can find the assignment management toolbar display context, and thus connecting a couple of dots here. So this method right here, get creation menu, more specifically this creation menu method right here, is the method that's being used to display a plus icon for adding our assignments. So we saw that back in the UI, and this is what's on what is rendering that plus button, you'll notice within that plus button, there's this MVC render command name, and then this MVC command name that's being passed. So when we click on that plus button, in effect, it's going to be calling an MVC render command and then passing this parameter specifically. So we're going to be creating an MVC render command to capture that MVC command name, edit assignment we'll call it, so that we can render a specific JSP. In this situation, the JSP is going to be that edit assignment.jsp that we just created not too long ago. So let's go ahead and create that MVC render command. So we're going to be back over in that portlet action folder, the one that we created in the previous video, and we're going to add another MVC render command inside of that package. So creating a new class, we'll call it edit assignment MVC render command, like so. Once you have that all typed out, go ahead and click finish. Heading back over to the exercise materials, we're going to grab the next snippet. So copy there, we'll go ahead and replace everything. And once you do, make sure to save the file along the way. I'll wait a few moments here to let Liferay Developer Studio do its thing. Again, every time we save the file, this will redeploy the application. So starting back from the top, the first thing I always like to look at is the component annotation. So here within the component annotation, right, we have our two properties defined in that component annotation. The first one is the portlet name. So which portlet are we listening to? From that portlet, we're trying to catch, receive, or listen for a specific MVC command name. In this situation, the MVC command name is going to be MVC command names.edit assignment. So effectively, connecting the dots one more time, over here in this Java class, we are creating that plus button. Once we click on that plus button, it's going to invoke a render URL, calling an MVC render command with this specific parameter right here. Right, we created the MVC render command to listen for that specific parameter. So once that plus button is clicked, it's going to invoke this class that we just created. Once the class is invoked, it's going to call the render method. And then at the very end, it's going to render this JSP, the edit assignment.jsp. Starting from the bottom, we are asking the service registry for a reference of the assignment service, so this specific API, so that we can make these API calls. Take notice that the assignment service is a remote service. Again, generally, if we are using both local and remote services, we're typically going to call the remote services in practice so that we can implement permission checking within the remote services. Recall from one of our previous videos, we discussed how remote services is more like a wrapper or a facade over the local service. An overview of the rest of the code here, we're going to be trying to grab an assignment based off of the assignment ID that's passed along from that render request object. Assuming that we're able to get that assignment ID, no worries. If anything goes wrong along the way, we'll throw a couple of exceptions. So if the assignment ID is greater than 0, this is basically saying we have an assignment to be able to edit. If the assignment ID is 0, we're creating a brand new assignment. From there, we set a couple of render request attributes and then render the JSP. So if you haven't done so, go ahead and save the file. And let's take a look and see what this looks like. So heading over to localhost, let's go ahead and try to click this plus button here. It's taking a little bit of time, that's a good sign. So clicking on the plus button invokes that render URL, thus calling that MVC render command to render that edit assignment.jsp. So this is a good checkpoint. You have a couple more parts that we need to take care of, but this wraps it up for this part of this video, and I will see you in the next video.